Welcome to the RIA Podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today I've got the good fortune to be with Gabe McManus from Influential Advisor. Gabe, thanks so much for joining us.
Seth, so good to be with you here today.
It is good to have you. So let's talk about Influential Advisor. But first, let's go back in time a little bit. Um, how did you get started?
Yeah, I had an unusual route because I was a theater director for a long time and in Los Angeles and directing shows. And I had a hobby. I would go take walks in Fryman Canyon near Studio City, and I listened to books on investments and on personal finance. And then a few years later, I was talking to my brother, who he helped financial advisors to write books that they could use to attract their ideal prospective clients. And I had edited books before, and we just saw these synergies there. And so I was able to go and, Seth, it's still storytelling, but now instead of for theater, I'm helping financial advisors to tell their stories in meaningful ways. And so they can put them in books, they can talk about their stories on podcasts, and they can attract the clients that they'd like to their practice.
Well, that is, of course, what we all want.
Yes.
So, how did that process come about?
Well, my brother had worked with authority marketing for a long time. And the book came about because what he realized is that the book was the ultimate trust builder. That when you capture the stories, the things that you do, the systems and the frameworks that are from your practice, and you put that in a book and somebody reads it, that they understand before they even come to meet with you or your team the things that you do best and the ways that you can help them. And I think that in a book, it really needs to connect with your ideal audience. It needs to build trust in who you are, and those stories need to motivate people to action. And that's what you can capture, and it's there forever in a book that you can use.
So, tell us about the first book.
My brother's been doing this for a long time. And when I joined him and became his business partner, I can speak to the first time that I was doing it because what I found was that it's too easy when you're thinking about creating a book, going to the comprehensive and trying to think you need to get everything in there and all the technical details. But what I realized is that in financial advisory practice, it's a world of stories. And that's what I worked from the beginning to help people bring out is what's the story behind this? What's going to connect to somebody so they see themselves in it and they see the transformations that can take place and that are possible. And then that motivates them to come and say, you know what, you have the solutions for me. I want to work with you.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you talk? I mean, you've helped so many advisors. Can you talk a little bit about an example of one or two of kind of this is what they were dealing with before they found you, how that process went, and then kind of that magical transformation, what happened, when it worked?
I'm thinking of there's an advisor that he's in the Bay Area and he works with a lot of tech industry executives and engineers. He wrote his book with me, and what he said afterwards, he was putting that book into his clients' hands and they were passing it out to other people. But he said they already viewed him as an expert, but now they would read things in it and say, oh, we need to do this for me. And so even if he had mentioned it before, now because of the book, they were actually coming and saying, please take care of this. We want to do it. And so he said the book, it raised just his credibility, the things he was saying. And it also opened the doors to so many other wonderful opportunities that he was able to go and speak to groups. Went into HP. He was on podcasts that were directly towards people in the tech industry. And so he's sharing these messages that he had and now getting in front of his ideal audience. He said he met his targets. He had targets for certain things that were annual targets, and he was meeting them by June. And so, it did make a tremendous difference in his practice and what he was offering to people.
That is absolutely incredible. So, am I allowed to ask how many books you've helped facilitate since then?
Since then, we've helped over 500 financial advisors, and I think that's probably more like 6 or 7 at this point, but and growing because I think that this is something that people recognize as something that's valuable. It's something that they can utilize to in all the marketing things that they're doing already, but now they can take it and the book makes everything spin faster, Seth. That whatever you're doing well now in marketing, the book gets added to it. It gets into people's hands. It's that trust builder that brings them to you with what we call pre-sold because they come in already really having a great understanding of what you do.
That is fantastic. And 500, an incredible number. Let's talk about what are the biggest misconceptions that you're hearing from advisors when they come to you, before they get started?
Yeah. One is, do I have to be an author or a writer to do this? And while we do require a master's degree in creative, no, wait, we don't require that. And then nobody that comes to us thinks of themselves off the bat as a writer, but a lot of times they have the desire in them to have a book. And so that's the first thing that we make sure that they know is that you're working with a team and an experienced team. And so you have a book coach and a writer as part of that team. And then it's talking out through conversations, the best things that you do, the stories and the frameworks and the systems. And Seth, I wrote my own book a year ago. And what I've realized, I did it on my own. I've realized how valuable having a team and a collaborative process can be because for me, it was daunting. It was a lot of work on my own, but it becomes enjoyable when you're working with a team because I work as a book coach and we have great conversations. It doesn't become a draining part of your week. And I know that a lot of financial advisors, there's no white space on the calendar, but it becomes something that it clarifies what you're doing and what you do best. And it can be an enjoyable process to create your book.
Absolutely. I also have had the experience of writing a number. I've written 11 books. I wrote a number of them the old-fashioned way that I
Yes.
physically wrote before I learned better. So I feel your pain. I've been there, and obviously, there's a much easier way to create a book than physically writing every word of it yourself.
Right. Yes, there is.
What has been? I mean, you've helped over 500 advisors. What's your biggest challenge now?
What I'm working on, so my book is called Sharpen Your Message, and it's about guest podcasting for financial advisors. And what we found is that we can create that book and we get it to what we call the polished version of your voice. And so the financial advisor, because there's reputation risk, you create a book and you don't want something that doesn't sound like you, doesn't capture the best of what you do. And so we get to that polished version of your voice where people say that's the way I would say things if it was on my best day, if I said it exactly the way that I wanted to say it. But then, Seth, the challenge that I'm running into now is that once you have the book, you want to share your ideas more broadly. You can only have so many conversations in one day. And so podcasting becomes a great way to get out there, talk about the ideas in your book, and get yourself out in front of your ideal prospective clients. But I was just talking to an advisor yesterday, and I mean, he has a wonderful book. The messages he's sharing are so good. And he said, I just had my first talk in front of a Kiwanis club. And he said, it wasn't as good as the way I've got it in the book. And I said, okay, that's what we're going to work on because that's what my book is about taking what you have in the book and now sharpening those messages up. And so when you do get those opportunities to speak, that you're still connecting and building trust and still motivating people to action through what you say.
That's awesome. You said a word that's magic to my ears, podcasting. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about what you mean by that and how that process kind of works.
You know, I've been thinking about because a lot of times I hear that people say, well, I'd like to start my own podcast. And I say, I have a podcast. I think that's a wonderful idea. And yet it's a lot of work. I mean, you know, Seth, I mean, just all the setting up guests and then editing and creating an audience that it takes a lot of work. But the opportunity I feel right now is in guest podcasting because then they have a book. The book is foundational. It's the ticket in the door to be able to go out and to speak and to share your ideas. And then once you have the book, you get on guest podcasting. Now, instead of having to do all the work, it's about you that you get asked about the things that you're doing best. You're getting in front of the people you want to speak to. And so guest podcasting can be a wonderful way to reach broader audiences.
Absolutely. We certainly agree with that here. And producing doesn't, a lot of different shows. Happy to have a separate conversation about getting those advisors out on our shows as great guests.
Yes.
Um, you've helped so many. What's your biggest challenge now?
You know, in my book, I talk about Seth, I call it podcast mode. And so I work as a coach to help people, financial advisors, to get ready. Podcast mode is we'll get on a Zoom call, and for the first couple minutes, we're just connecting and sharing a couple stories, and I see the personalities shining. And then I say, okay, let's start working. Here's question number one, ready, go. And all of a sudden it drops off and the answers start getting technical. They start getting a little careful, sometimes even a little boring. And I say, that's not what's actually happening here. I know I just saw that there's something so much better that can be shared. And so there was one advisor I worked with, her name is Morgan. And when we started to work, she said, she had co-authored a book. She said, I'm the numbers person. I like to nerd out on numbers. She said, public speaking isn't really my thing. But what I saw, I said, okay, let's just start. And from the beginning, I saw that she really did have wonderful stories to share. And she had a way of expressing her ideas with comfort and warmth that were front and center. And so she did her first podcast. We continued to work, and she was growing her practice at that time. She was acquiring other practices and growing at a rapid rate. She kept doing podcasts. Within 6 months, she built that confidence. Her identity was shifting because of the book and also the work that she was now doing, going on podcasts. Her practice doubled in that time, and she went on to one of the largest podcasts in her space. It raised her visibility so incredibly high that, this is my challenge, is to make sure that the best of what financial advisors offer and of who they are, that I help to bring out, and so it shines when they get these opportunities.
That's awesome. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
You know, when I was walking the hills around Los Angeles and listening, I didn't know that I'd get to work in this space around financial professionals. And so I love it because it's still storytelling, but it's telling different kinds of stories. And I think these are so transformational. And so I truly love every day getting to share in these stories. They're all unique, Seth. That's the amazing thing is, book after book and getting ready for podcasts, that it's all different because we're not just talking about the technical details, but we're really talking about the unique things that make a financial advisor's practice so special and the things that they do to help. And so I love that aspect of my work.
Awesome. I'm sure it's going to vary on how fast the financial advisor gets things done. And we won't quote you, but on average, start to finish, how long does it kind of take your normal
Yes.
client from start to book is done and out the door?
Yes. And we say as little as 8 weeks. I would say maybe 12 is more realistic, but it does depend on schedules. I like to keep momentum alive. And so when we begin to work, we try to meet once a week. We get it from those conversations to something that they're truly proud to have in their hands. There was one financial advisor who lives near me in St. Louis, and he put it into the hands of his mother, and she said, "Dan, that sounds exactly like you." And so that's what we work to do in that time frame. And I hear that over and over again, that it really does represent the best of the way that they could express ideas. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time, but we make sure that we get it right.
That is awesome. For our folks who are watching and listening and want to learn more, where is the best place for us to send them?
You can reach me at influentialadvisor.com/Gabe, Gabe. And there you can get a copy of my book, Sharpen Your Message. And also, my calendar link is there if you'd like to work with me to sharpen your message as you either put your ideas in a book or get ready for going on podcasts.
Awesome. That was influentialadvisor.com/Gabe. Go check it out. Tell them the RIA podcast sent you. Gabe, we know your time is incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Seth, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Our pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.